Thanks for joining us for Religious Hard Talk. I'm Ian Boyne. Today we speak to a senior Jamaican churchman, not because he's that old, but he certainly has been involved in Christian activism since early days at JC, and he has had a significant impact on Jamaican life. He's a founder of Operation Save Jamaica, founder of Christian Life Fellowship. I think he has been pastoring there for about 31 years now. Well known in the charismatic community, but in the Jamaican evangelical community, and indeed the Christian community generally. Bruce Fletcher has worked in Majestic Gardens, in Trenchtown, Maxfield, a number of the inner city communities in Jamaica. He believes that the gospel must have an impact on the nations. He does not believe in a quietistic, privatistic religion. He feels that Christians must be engaged in the society. Christians must be having an impact in the society. And therefore, he has been active in the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society. He's also involved in the recently formed National Association for the Family, Prayer 2000, quite a number of organizations. Trained as a civil engineer, a graduate of the University of the West Indies, and certainly that engineering training has stood him in good stead as a strategic leader. So we talked to Bruce Fletcher about his work, about his ministry, about the role of the church in Jamaica. There is still, some ignorance in too many circles in Jamaica with reference to the view that the church is not doing enough and the church is not having an impact. That is based on ignorance. The church is very actively involved. The church is touching the lives of people in communities all across Jamaica. If you doubt that, stay tuned to this interview. Good to have you, Pastor Bruce.
Good to be here, Ian.
Yeah, you have had this burden for the nation for a long time. You are not just sitting down waiting for Jesus to burst the skies to take us all to heaven. Why do you think that's an inadequate theological perspective?
Well,
just waiting on Jesus to come.
I'm waiting on Jesus to come.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I believe that he has put us here to do work. And so...
But people say, boy, Pastor, the Bible predicts that things will get bad in the last days. You can't improve things. Even men and seducers will wax worse and worse. My kingdom is not of this world. Jesus said that. So why are you putting out all this effort trying to...
Well, when Jesus came, he said something to his disciples. He said, when he saw the multitudes, he felt compassion for them because they were weary and worn out, the sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is abundant, but the workers are few. And I believe that we still have people who are weary and worn out and who needs to be reached in our nation. And so I don't think the church can just be waiting for Jesus without reaching these people. But I also believe that Jesus caused God, the Father in heaven, caused the rain to shine on the
just and unjust.
Mm-hmm. And so while we are on earth, we must be demonstrating that same kind of attitude that the Father has. And so we must be serving our community, we must be serving people and making a difference in their lives.
So is it enough to tell them about the message of salvation, Pastor? To tell them how to be saved and to have them live a life of spiritual transformation? Some would say, why are you taking up the government's work? You're in Majestic Gardens, you're in Trenchtown, building schools and so on. Why you don't leave the government to do them work and you just preach the gospel?
Well, why do we say that that's the government work? Before, is only since 1962 that the government has taken over education. The church was involved before. And so we believe that the church also have a role to play in different aspects of the society, including education. So it's not a matter of just the government. And I believe that unless all of us in our nation take up our responsibility for our country, then our country won't change. It's not just the government's responsibility to change the nation. And the church, I believe, should be the foremost at the forefront of bringing change in the nation.
at the forefront. Tell us about some of the work you have done in Trenchtown, for example, and the kind of impact that has had.
Well, in Trenchtown, the first thing we did when we got started was to go and form a pastors fraternal. And out of that pastors fraternal, there was a lot of outreaches that took place, but there are some of the pastors there who are doing some strategic things. For example, they had a banana chips factory that was employing persons. Later on, there came Dr. Henry Morgan, who employed persons.
He's still in Trenchtown today.
And still in Trenchtown today and making a difference.
Yes.
So I would say, and there's Lorna Stanley, who with the Operation Restoration Christian School. And I always remember what she said when she went the first time to Trenchtown. There were two men fighting, and she played a role in stopping the fight. And following day or two after, a gentleman came to her and said, "Thank you." And she didn't remember who this gentleman was, but he was one of the men who were in the fight. And he said to her, "We need people like you to come down and stop us from killing off one another." And so right there and then, she would have probably saved her life if she wasn't involved. And that's what the church ought to be doing.
The church ought to be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you would have seen a lot of transformation in Trenchtown, in Maxfield, in Majestic Gardens over the years. Tell us about some of these concrete examples of people whom you knew, what happened in their lives as a result of their encounter with the gospel and with the work that the Lord has led you to do.
Well, there's a gentleman in Majestic Gardens who came to one of our men's breakfasts, you know, because we used to have these men's breakfasts where we invite men from all different communities, and we used to have it at a hotel or
hotel?
Yes.
So you bring man from inner city up down in a hotel and show him a new surroundings.
That's
and
right.
Good,
and
good.
then we share and we speak about their own situation and look at how we can help them. But there's a gentleman who came to one of our breakfast meetings. He had been to prison several times, but the Lord spoke to him, and I mean, everybody knows him in the community. The name is Cutter. But his life changed, and he came to us to get married, so that he could get married because he felt that that was the right thing to do. And so his life has changed and started to preach the gospel, and people were surprised at his own lifestyle and the change that took place in him. So that's one example of somebody that has changed. There are some others that wasn't directly from us, but there were others who were singers and whose lives were changed. And one of them I saw recently in Florida. And you realize that God had done a mighty work with him. He was from Rima section. And so you see, God has worked tremendously. In Majestic Gardens, there are a number of young people who got saved and part of a church, and a lot of them went to tertiary institutions, which I think that maybe if they didn't have a certain influence, that would not have happened. Many of them are now married and raising their family. And I think that you see those lives being changed and transformed. Many of them still live in Majestic Gardens, but still living a certain life of change.
Making a difference as a result of the encounter with the gospel. And you have also been integrally involved you're a pioneer in the street pastors movement here in Jamaica.
Well, coming out of Trenchtown, Les Isaacs came and visited Trenchtown, and he saw that the pastors were reaching out to the men in the community and felt that they needed to have something similar in the United Kingdom. And so he invited up Bobby Wilmot and myself, and we went and shared up there. And out of that was birthed the street pastor. So now every time street pastor is going to a new territory, our names are called. But it was birthed out of Trenchtown. It was inspired out of Trenchtown, and it's over 12,000 street pastors now in the UK alone.
And you yourself go on the road. You probably have a whole treasury of experiences
and people,
on the road.
And what you realize, people need people to talk to share their burdens with, people to listen, and where we can help and to show care. But some people are able to just release some of their burdens by us just going. And I remember one night I was passing a gentleman, and he was upset because you said, you know, there were street pastors coming out every night and none of them came and spoke to him. What that showed is that people wanted persons to talk to them.
Absolutely. And Bruce Fletcher has been talking to people all over the world. He's building alliances not only with persons in Jamaica, in different strategic areas, but also building alliances with persons from abroad. When we come back, a young man from Trinidad will join us. He's here for a conference. This is Religious Hard Talk. We take our first break. Welcome back to Religious Hard Talk. We're talking to persons who are taking Christianity to the streets, taking Christianity beyond the walls of the church. Persons who believe passionately that the church must have an impact on the society. The church must be involved in transformation. We have a young man, one of our Caribbean brothers, Luke Kwamina, from Trinidad. And he has been trained in the area of organizational leadership. He has the master's degree in organizational leadership, is presently doing doctoral studies in that same area from Nova Southeastern University in Florida. He has already traveled to over 25 countries, talking to young people about transformation, the importance of positive thinking, the importance of taking a certain mental attitude to life. And he's here for one of the conferences being organized by Bruce Fletcher under Bruce's ministry. Luke, good to have you. Tell us about how the gospel is moving in your multi-ethnic, multi-religious society of Trinidad. Are people coming to Christ, or are they moving more toward Islam?
Well, people are coming towards Christ. I think that the gospel has never lost its power. But I can tell you, you look at the altars at many churches, and they have gone barren.
Gone barren?
The distractions are out there. You have a lot of options today.
True.
There's a lot more information
right.
that you can access.
Yes, true.
So they are not only listening to the gospel, there are a lot of other philosophies out there.
That is right.
But the church has remained constant in its focus and its purpose. And like you heard from Pastor Bruce, strategies must change, methodologies must change, but the message must remain consistent.
And how can the church remain relevant to Caribbean youth? The Caribbean youth are influenced heavily by North American culture of hedonism. Your young people in Trinidad, like ours, probably would know far more about American pop stars, American pop culture, than Jamaican and Trinidadian culture. It is a generation suffering from attention deficit disorder. The idea of sitting down and listening to a sermon for 30 minutes, you know, I mean, it's a Snapchat, Twitter generation.
Yes.
You are working with the youth. How can the church remain relevant? I mean, you have your soca there in Trinidad. We have our dancehall. Same sensuality, same hedonism. That's what holding the people.
Well, I can tell you, just sharing from my own experience. I grew up in a pastor's home. I rebelled against the whole thing in my teenage years. I didn't want to be seen next to a church. I thought it was very unfair that God would place me in a pastor's family without having the choice.
Yes.
But I've learned something from Dr. Dobson, and I have lived to see it throughout my life, that more powerful than culture is the power of fathering. And I can tell you, outside of culture, the family has failed. And so what has been able to help me, the backbone of my life, is knowing that you come out of a home with values. I always remember going to college in North America. I say, well, nobody knows me out here. Nobody knows I'm a pastor's son. I could do anything. And the moment I said that, I heard my father's voice deep down in my inner man saying, Luke, wherever you go, firstly, you represent this family. You're a Kwamina. Secondly, you represent a bigger message, which is the gospel, and you're also part of a kingdom. And having that type of identity, regardless of the power of culture, I've seen that if we can strengthen the homes, and I know it might sound like, it is something that we really cannot bring change to.
Yes.
But the church, like you said just now earlier, can the church bring change to the community? And is that the government's work? I believe that the church plays a big role in strengthening family life throughout the nation. I believe that the first institution God put together is marriage. And family is built on the foundation of strong marriage. And we must get back to the basics.
If you look at our culture in Jamaica, strong concubinage, strong common law relationships, or visiting relationships without any kind of commitment, high sexual promiscuity.
Yes.
The Caribbean family is in crisis. And not only that, when you look at the penetration of American culture on our home, the influence on our children, the influence through media, through the cell phone, through the tablets and the various devices. Those influences are far stronger than mommy and daddy. Mommy and daddy look foolish with their weird Christian values.
Yes.
Luke.
Yes. And that's why we talk
So you talk about your father's voice there in North America. Nowadays, people would hear Rihanna. Your father's voice.
Well, I'll tell you this. I heard a story that really impacted me of after a storm, 10,000 starfishes on the seashore, and a young man is out there taking starfish and he's throwing back. And at the end, the old man says, what difference would you make? And when he throws that one, he says, it will make a difference to that one.
Yes.
And I believe, just like Pastor Bruce said, that's the attitude that we have to have. Each one reach one. And the very next person that I meet when I leave this place, I have to make a difference to that one. And till my last breath, we have to live purposefully and make sure that we die empty of our God-given potential.
So we can't despair, Pastor Bruce. We can't just say, look at the forces working against us. Jamaica is said to have more churches per square mile in the country. But it's one of the most violent and corrupt countries. Look at the corruption among the politicians, the corruption at all levels. How you feel after working so many decades trying to save Jamaica, Operation Save Jamaica? We're in such a wretched state.
Well, a couple of things I'd want to say. I think the church is more united now than before. So there is more unity. I think the church is looking beyond the walls more than before.
That's true.
And so as a result, I think we will become a lot more strategic in our approach. I also believe that there are, in terms of the pastors' fraternals, there are pastors' fraternals in almost all of the communities in Jamaica.
Pastors' fraternal, yes.
And
yes,
so I think
true.
that at this point in time, there's hope to bring change in our nation. And when I went to JC at Jamaica College, there was a young man who was a Rasta who got saved. And then there was another one who blood and fire that Rasta. He said, you are not true Rasta.
Yeah, yes.
But we continued to share the gospel with him, and 6 months later, he became a Christian. And he had a baby mother, but because he became a Christian and he made a commitment to live a certain way.
Want to get married?
He got married.
He did.
Right? And he's still married to that same lady.
Still married to that same lady.
After several years, and he grew up in an inner city community. I know that his life would have been totally different as a football star, etc. But his commitment to Christ has made a significant difference in his life for his entire life. And I believe that as we share the gospel, but also as we share principles and show people that this is a better way to live and this is better for your children and we can raise a better society, I believe that we will have an impact. And as a church, one of the things I believe the church can do is be a center from which we share with the community about families.
Of course.
So the church should really be a center of excellence.
Yeah.
Where it promulgates certain
values.
Values. How important it is to impact the political class, you know, the politicians? Do you and other churchmen think it important to like meet with the Prime Minister ever so often, to meet the leader of the opposition, to sit down with these persons and to discuss national issues, seek to impact policy?
Without a doubt, I believe that's important, and I think the upcoming conference that we're having, one of the things that we want to see coming out of it is recommendations to the government in different areas, because you have a lot of Christians who are in different fields,
Yes.
and they bring certain values to those fields, and they also have certain perspectives, and some of those things we want to pull together and to share with the government.
So we're talking about a Christian diaspora conference. This
Christian
will be the first Christian diaspora conference.
That's correct.
That will be held between October 13th and 14th in Montego Bay at Beer Star.
In Montego Bay.
Very important, a Christian diaspora conference.
Right. And this is not just
Explain the concept, yeah.
It's not just being pushed from the Jamaican context. There are Christians in the diaspora who wants to see Jamaica change.
People coming from United Kingdom,
Canada,
US,
and we're trying to get as well from the Caribbean as well. Again, it is linking the church in the diaspora with the church here to have significant impact. Because part of the thing sometimes is that we want to do projects, but we're not able to sustain them.
That's right.
And if we partner together, then we can have sustainable projects that can have, over time, a significant impact on our nation.
So what are the kinds of agenda items that
well, one of the things we want to address is keeping youngsters out of prison. So we want to look at a divergent policy, and we wanted to have a halfway house eventually. There are some churches who have, where judges have sentenced persons to them, and they have made a significant impact in those persons' lives. And if we can get the church more involved in things like that, mentoring young persons, I think that there can be a significant change to our youngsters, because a lot of what our youngsters need is love.
Look, talk about that, the importance of that love, positive affirmation. How important are those things?
Well, like in the youth ministry I come from in Trinidad, there are about 4 things that we try to get very clear with every young person walking through the door. One is, where did you come from? A question of their source, so they could understand value. Who are you? A question of their identity. Why are you here? You would believe that the statistics show 83% of people who have studied degrees now work in jobs that has nothing to do with the degree. And that search for the reason you are here on earth sometimes starts too late, and some people never get to a solution. Why are you here? We want to help people discover, what can you do? What is your potential? Your skills, your giftings, how do you develop that? How do you work on yourself? I remember hearing Jim Rohn says, work harder on yourself than you work on your job.
That's right.
And that will always take you to another place. But a very important question, which we're going to start with dealing with tonight, is, where are you going? Vision. I always share with young people that the greatest resource in your life is the vision, your personal vision. Where are you going with this potential that God has blessed you with?
We want to explore that when we come back. Let him give us some snippets of the presentation that he will make. Where are you going? The importance of vision and how that helps you. It's religious hard talk. We're telling you what the church is doing, and we are giving you some of the information that the church imparts on this mission. We take another break, but we'll be right back.